was the most difficult thing to shoot in the warehouse?
The hardest thing with this was, if I zoom in here, there's a shot where Ray kind of comes out of this elevator and comes in, walks into the middle of the room. We initially were planning to do that as a one take from downstairs, follow him through the first floor of like what essentially became holding, but follow him through there into like this lift gate elevator. He was going to go up, exit, and then we'd suddenly just be in this like hostage, crime scenario, which would have been like a real tone shift for everything else.
Why didn't we do that?
We didn't do that because the owner of the property basically had to do the actual lift gate himself and everything.
And the elevator was 17 minutes long. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it's pretty lengthy. So adding the walking from outside in, doing all that and everything, it would have just been a lot of padding on runtime for not a lot of payoff. Maybe if we like could have heard in the film or something like what was happening upstairs from outside, maybe then it would have like built some like anxiety and tension for what's going to be revealed. But at the same time, like,
it still would have been too long for me.
It would have been too long, but also like, why can you hear this guy getting beat half to death from outside? That's horrible. That's not like a good crime. So people would have called that out pretty quick.
Even
probably.
think of that.
Oh, that's like I don't know. It just crossed my mind just now. But anyway, yeah, it would have just taken too long practically. So I think we basically like chopped out the moving from one location to the other. He's just in the elevator and then he exits and he's in that situation. But yeah, that was probably the hardest one just because it was several takes where we had to get the timing for the elevator right, his blocking, my blocking, because it was also all handheld. So I had to kind of land in frame in accordance to where the actors were as well.
All right. So we have an original diagram of what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
What did we do and what did we change and why did we change it?
Okay. So I'm going to zoom out slightly just so you can see everything. I'm going to circle what we kept in terms of lighting. So this stayed. And that's it. This tool display was a practical in the end. We did put a light above it to simulate the lighting coming off of it, but in the end, this tool display wasn't strong enough to act as our key. So we kind of had to add like a second unit up here to kind of like cast down. Actually, I'm going to change the direction of that a little. But yeah, something like that. So that way it came in there. You can see that in this photo. So it's up there hiding. And our edge light, which initially was going to be like outside of this door, which had like a really heavy industrial fan. The plan was to like haze up the room a ton and have someone like manually pull the pulley mechanism that would have operated the fan. So that way the light coming through the blades would be spinning actively throughout the scene.
Would have got some cool shadows with that.
Yeah, it would have been awesome. But it was too cold to do that. So in order for that to work, we would have had to run power to the unit, which meant keeping the door open and also
freezing.
Yeah, keeping like the hatch to this fan open, which also would have let more air in and sound. So I'm sure Teresa appreciated that we didn't end up doing that. But yeah, you can see it back here. That's the fan, but it's covered in sound blankets. And this is the door that would have had to have been open. But in the end, we just moved our edge light there. And yeah, I mean, it was still pretty nice. Like even with the haze, like we still got all these like beautiful light beams. You know, some nice like hard light coming in for the edge. So it still looked pretty nice. We also had a skylight working back here that initially we were thinking we might have to cover if the light was going to be too inconsistent that day. But I I can't remember off the top of my head. Was that also cloudy that day? We didn't cover it, so it may
I
have been
think the sun
consistent.
just passed.
Okay.
So we were getting a consistent, like there were two.
Yeah, there
There
were
was
two.
the skylight in the back and the skylight in the front.
Okay.
And they actually gave like a little bit of depth to the images and didn't drown out the image. So we didn't have to use a lot of extra lights, even though you did use the bounce board for like the close ups.
Yeah. So as we moved in, yeah, we definitely used this bounce down here a good chunk, just to fill in some of the shots, uh, you know, as we went throughout the scene. This is how the space looks naturally without anything. So yeah, that nan light that we kept, that was like above that desk. You know, our key was up here, and then the edge is way out of frame. But yeah, that's how it looks from the other side.
Can we take a look at some of the frames?
Sure. So, any preference for where we start? These are
Oh,
4 keyframes.
start at the top left.
All right, cool. We'll work clockwise. So this is Edward.
It's a badass frame right there.
Thank you. For him as well. It looks great.
Oh, he loves it. He feels like he can be an action star now.
Hell yeah, that's good to hear. Nice.
I told him no. Yeah, I told him no.
So this is like pretty much right after the bar scene. So for the lighting in this, we had our key light, the one that's, simulating this tool shed, playing from like the rafters coming down, just acting as like the light filling his face here. And
The pool of light.
the pool of light.
skylight.
Yeah, that's the skylight working naturally. In our edge, we didn't actually play. The edge didn't play in this one because he's in black. The rest of the space is like this bone white, so he already stood out enough. So that actually didn't play in this frame. So this is, in terms of what we added to the space, this is technically just a one light setup. Now going clockwise. This is, again, our key light up here coming down. Our practical that, the location already had. They just had like lights built into the actual shed, which was really cool. It makes everything look really nice. If you want any detail shots, they're there. They also had like small ones and like this kind of like industrial jack-o'-lantern back there, which was pretty cool. I think this back here is also another skylight, which is nice. Gives a little bit of color contrast between like the yellow greens on the right side of frame, which is where the Fincher kind of influence comes in terms of color. And then our edge coming just to fill in, I guess, like this back part of her dress, so it doesn't just fall into darkness too quickly, and you can just see some more detail on it. You can see, I guess, if you look in her shoe, what direction that edge is coming from, because there's a little bit of like specularity in there. Cool. So working clockwise yet again, another very action and movie-esque frame.
Was this intentionally Dutch? Did we always say Dutch? I think we did in pre-po.
I don't know if we always had this in mind as a Dutch. I like Dutches, so I might have just done it and just like, how does this feel? And we just went with it. We may have even done the options with and without it, to be honest. Which is another benefit of pre-pro. If you plan well enough, then you've got time budgeted in the day to, play around and just see how things feel if you want. So yeah, this is very much so our edge. We just turned it, I guess, roughly like 40 degrees, 45 degrees towards him or something like that. So that way he got like these nice like halos on his hair, these like sharp lines going down his face. And past that, we probably had some bounce playing on this side of frame, just to fill in his face, because otherwise it wouldn't have been full silhouette. It would have just been like a tad too dark. But yeah, so this is again, like a one light setup. Because even though we're using a light and bounce, the bounce technically isn't a light. You're just using one light and then reshaping it a second time. So, yep, another one light setup. And then this, I feel like you really get to see all of our sources at work. So all of like these warm tones on her face, on the hand, on the gun.
On Julia.
Yes, on Julia. Thank
or
you.
Jessica, which is her real name.
Okay, on Julia/Jessica, and also in her eye, you can see that little catch light. That's all of our key. Let me swap this to yellow. So yeah, that's all coming down from above, acting as our key. You might even see that here as well, and just some of the lighting, I guess, like contrast and like direction on the tape from where that light is coming from. And then we have like the cooler edge light. Whoops. Oh my God. What? Oh my God. Why? I'm gonna just do that. Yeah. Our edge light is coming in from above, just adding some shape to the back of her head, and like the back of her neck, just so that way, it separates her from the background a bit, and just balances out the exposure a bit as well. Sorry about that ruler. I don't even know what I did to do that just now, or how I would get rid of it. I literally don't know where that setting is. I'm sorry.
All good, all good. All right, so what was your favorite shot from these 2 days?
Favorite shot? This one with Edward was pretty cool, just because it felt very John Wick, and I remember everyone even on that day was like, "Oh, that looks great." So, that stood out for me. I thought it felt very. For me, this is probably like some of the more like intricate lighting, or in terms of like figuring out how I want my lighting to look and executing it to how I imagine it. This is probably like one of the scenes in general that does that for me. But I mean, I'm a sucker for a good like action hero kind of frame. So there's another shot that I was anticipating going in that isn't in these four, where we did a rig with the pistol. Not that pistol specifically, but a pistol, a prop pistol, where it's kind of like a POV shot from Edward's perspective. So that was pretty cool. I think we're saving that for actual viewers of the film to witness that firsthand without any spoilers.
I'll probably release it on some BTS eventually.
Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, that was the one I was looking forward to most. But I mean, the whole day was great. I had a good time. I think everything looks pretty solid. Yeah.
Awesome.